These are 20 hidden facts about Big Jake, the 1971 John Wayne Western that concealed Olympic champions, 3-decade soundtrack delays, and behind-the-scenes stories that reveal a production far more remarkable than the revenge plot playing out on screen. Growing up watching John Wayne on the big screen meant you probably caught Big Jake at some point. An aging gunfighter comes out of retirement to rescue his kidnapped grandson. Maureen O'Hara plays his estranged wife, and action unfolds across the Mexican landscape in what appeared to be another straightforward Wayne vehicle. But what happened behind the camera tells a completely different story, one filled with Olympic athletes, musical masterpieces locked away for decades, and casting decisions that connected this Western to everything from Dallas to Star Trek. May 26, 1971 brought Big Jake to theaters, and while most audiences focused on Wayne's performance and the violent action sequences, the real stories remained hidden in production details, cast backgrounds, and creative decisions that wouldn't surface for years. Here are 20 facts about Big Jake that even devoted John Wayne fans probably never knew. Fact number 1. An Olympic gold medalist performed stunts and played an outlaw. Dean Smith wore many hats on the Big Jake set, appearing as the outlaw Kid Duffy while also working as one of the film's stunt performers. And what most viewers never realized is that this same man had stood on an Olympic podium nearly 20 years earlier. Helsinki, Finland hosted the 1952 Summer Olympics, where Dean Smith ran the anchor leg of the 4x100-meter relay for the United States team. Gold medals were draped around his neck and his teammates' necks after they crossed the finish line ahead of the Soviet Union and Hungary, making Smith the fastest sprinter in America who had just conquered the world stage. What happened next surprised everyone. Fellow Olympic gold medalist Bob Mathias, the legendary decathlete, introduced Smith to John Wayne, and that introduction launched a Hollywood career spanning 12 films with Wayne, including Big Jake. The Olympic champion became one of the Duke's most trusted stunt performers, tackling dangerous sequences that required both athletic ability and absolute fearlessness. Smith once shared a story that captures the humor behind the grueling work, recalling how for McClintock, in 1963, he doubled for Maureen O'Hara, which meant wearing a red wig and white bustle to match her character's appearance. The other stuntmen never let him forget it, and Smith later joked in a 2014 interview with Rob Word, "The other stuntmen just kidded me all over the place, said it looked like I had walnuts in my socks, but anyway, I made more money on McClintock than any of the other stuntmen, so you can't complain on that." Smith continued working in Hollywood for decades after Big Jake, eventually writing a memoir in 2013 titled Cowboy Stuntman, From Olympic Gold to the Silver Screen. June 24, 2023 brought his death at age 91 in Breckenridge, Texas, leaving behind a legacy that connected Olympic glory to Hollywood action. Fact number 2. The soundtrack waited 30 years for its first commercial release. Elmer Bernstein composed one of his finest Western scores for Big Jake, creating themes that matched the epic scope of Wayne's character and the violent world he inhabited, and the music played in theaters across America in 1971, enhancing every emotional beat and action sequence. Then the score disappeared. No soundtrack album followed the theatrical release, no vinyl records appeared in stores for fans who wanted to own the music, and years passed, then decades, with film music enthusiasts searching for any commercial recording of Bernstein's work, while the Big Jake score remained locked away, inaccessible to everyone except those who could watch the film itself. December 2001 finally brought the world premiere recording of the complete Big Jake soundtrack from Prometheus Records. 30 full years had passed since audiences first heard this music, and the limited numbered edition contained exactly 3,000 copies with catalog number PCR 512, making each one a collector's item almost immediately. The CD offered approximately 60 minutes of music performed by the Hollywood Symphony Orchestra, conducted by Bernstein himself, with liner notes written by James Southall of the MovieWave website providing context and analysis for fans who had waited 3 decades to properly hear this score. One mystery puzzled collectors. The original master tapes survived only in mono format. A 1970s recording should have been captured in stereo, but for reasons never fully explained, only the mono version endured, though the music itself remained as powerful as ever, even if the technical specifications reflected limitations nobody expected. 30 years separated Elmer Bernstein's composition from its commercial release. Big Jake fans who wanted to own the music simply had to wait until the 21st century arrived. Fact number 3. Bernstein gave the villain an unexpectedly heroic musical theme. Richard Boone's portrayal of John Fane ranks among the most memorable villains in Wayne's entire filmography, bringing cold calculation and genuine menace to every scene, and Fane represents pure threat from his first appearance to his final confrontation with Jake McCandles. Bernstein could have scored Fane's gang with dissonant minor keys, harsh brass, and musical cues that telegraph their evil intentions, which is what audiences expected from villain themes and what most composers would have delivered. He chose a completely different approach. Instead of making Fane sound evil, Bernstein gave the gang a noble, imposing theme that treated them as the last of their breed, suggesting tragic figures rather than simple bad guys, outlaws clinging to a dying way of life in a world that no longer has room for them. This creative decision added unexpected depth to the film's conflict, and when Fane's theme plays, the music acknowledges these men as worthy adversaries for Jake McCandles, not merely obstacles to overcome. The score's most acclaimed moment arrives during what Bernstein called the reunion cue, when Jake first sees his kidnapped grandson, and rather than deploying the main themes that run through the rest of the film, Bernstein composed something entirely different: gentle harmonic progressions that build to a solo violin line. Film music critics have called this sequence one of the warmest snippets of musical scoring ever done. 30 years after the film's release, when that score finally became available to the public, listeners discovered the sophisticated choices Bernstein had made, realizing the villain received heroic music while the most emotional moment in the entire film avoided the obvious musical approach in favor of something more subtle and powerful. Fact number 4. The motorcycle was a 1960s Spanish bike disguised to look period-appropriate. Christopher Mitchum's character Michael McCandles roars onto the family ranch riding what appears to be an early 1900 motorcycle, representing the modern technology encroaching on the Old West, and the machine looks authentic to 1909, complete with bicycle-style handlebars and a box tank design that matches period photographs. None of it was real. Production couldn't source authentic working motorcycles from 1909, since those machines either no longer existed in functional condition or cost far more than the budget allowed, which meant the solution required creative modification of a modern bike. What appears on screen is actually a mid to late 1960s Montesa, most likely an Impala 175 Cross or Capra 250, manufactured in Spain and modified extensively to approximate period appearance. Some motorcycle historians identify it specifically as a Montesa Brio 110, and the production team added bicycle-style handlebars and a box tank, disguising the modern Spanish motorcycle as American technology from 60 years earlier. Sharp-eyed motorcycle enthusiasts watching Big Jake can spot the deception if they know what to look for, but most viewers accepted the machine as period-appropriate, since the disguise worked well enough to sell the illusion that Michael McCandles wrote into the story on a genuine article from 1909. Movie magic often depends on clever modifications like this, transforming what's available into what the story requires, regardless of historical accuracy. Fact number 5. John Wayne scouted filming locations on a Honda motorcycle. The rugged Mexican terrain around Durango presented constant challenges for the production, since scouting locations meant navigating rocky ground, steep hills, and unpredictable conditions that made travel difficult even in four-wheel drive trucks. Wayne found a better solution: a Honda SL 350 motorcycle that handled rough terrain faster and more efficiently than any truck on set, allowing him to zip across the Mexican landscape, evaluate potential filming locations, and return to base camp in a fraction of the time traditional scouting methods required. Crew members joked that Wayne preferred the Honda to horses because the Honda didn't bite, didn't buck, and didn't talk back. Wayne enjoyed the experience so much that he purchased his own 1971 Honda SL 350 after production wrapped, meaning the man who built his career on horseback had discovered the practical advantages of Japanese motorcycle engineering. Nobody watching Big Jake would guess that between takes and during pre-production, John Wayne was zipping around the Mexican desert on a Honda, scouting the same locations where he'd later appear on horseback as the ultimate symbol of the Old West. If this blend of Olympic athletes and hidden motorcycles has surprised you so far, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss another deep dive into classic Western history, because we've got 10 more facts coming that reveal even more secrets about Big Jake. Fact number 6. The film made more money overseas than it did domestically. Big Jake performed well at the American box office, earning $7.5 million in domestic rentals on a $4.8 million budget, and those numbers spelled commercial success by any standard, but when the international returns arrived, they exceeded domestic performance significantly, bringing in $9 million and outpacing American revenue by a notable margin. Different countries marketed the film with different approaches, with some emphasizing the violence that distinguished Big Jake from earlier Wayne westerns, and the Japanese title translated dramatically to $1 Million Blood Battle, reflecting a marketing strategy that highlighted the film's brutal action rather than Wayne's heroic persona. This international success contributed to Wayne being ranked the #1 box office star for 1971, marking the last time he would achieve this distinction across his remarkable career. 25 years running on the top 10 moneymakers poll, longer than any other star in Hollywood history, and 1971 marked the final peak of that extraordinary commercial dominance. Foreign audiences embraced Big Jake even more enthusiastically than American viewers, proving that Wayne's appeal transcended borders and that the film's violent approach resonated across different cultures, while the worldwide gross demonstrated that Big Jake had connected with audiences everywhere, not just in the American market where Wayne's career had been built. Fact number 7. Wayne's stunt double rode a horse named Cocaine. Chuck Roberson served as John Wayne's primary stunt double for nearly 30 years, performing dangerous sequences that Wayne's insurance wouldn't allow him to attempt, and their physical resemblance made seamless substitution possible, with audiences watching Wayne films rarely noticing when Roberson replaced the star for hazardous work. Big Jake required numerous horse falls, men tumbling from saddles after being shot, animals collapsing dramatically during action sequences, and this type of stunt work demands specially trained horses that understand exactly what is expected and can execute falls safely without injuring themselves or their riders. Roberson rode a falling horse with a memorable name, Cocaine. This animal had been specifically conditioned to perform dramatic falls on command, responding to subtle cues that told him when to collapse and how to do it safely, and while the name raised eyebrows, the horse's abilities made him invaluable for action sequences that required precision timing and consistent performance. Roberson later wrote about his experiences working with Wayne in his 1980 autobiography titled The Fall Guy: 30 Years as the Duke's Double, documenting decades of dangerous work, narrow escapes, and the close partnership between a stunt double and the biggest star in Hollywood. Every time audiences watched a dramatic horse fall in Big Jake, they were witnessing Roberson's expertise combined with Cocaine's training, creating action that looked spontaneous and violent, while actually being carefully choreographed to protect everyone involved. Fact number 8. The ranch set was recycled from Wayne's previous film. The impressive McCandless Ranch that appears throughout Big Jake, the sprawling complex where the kidnapping occurs and where family confrontations unfold, wasn't built specifically for this production, since that same set had appeared in Chisholm just 1 year earlier, in 1960. The state of Durango financed construction of this elaborate $1.6 million filming complex at Rancho Marley, 35 miles from Durango City, and Wayne's production company recognized the value in reusing this expensive infrastructure rather than building something new from scratch. Big Jake wasn't the first or last production to recycle sets this way, because Hollywood has always understood that expensive construction shouldn't be demolished if it can serve multiple stories, which meant the McCandless Ranch and the Chisholm Ranch could easily pass for the same location, since they literally were the same location, just with minor modifications to distinguish one film from the other. Wayne favored Durango for practical reasons beyond set availability. Union-free working conditions meant more flexible production schedules and lower labor costs. Salary rules allowed arrangements that significantly reduced expenses for Batjack Productions, and the Mexican locations delivered everything Wayne needed, including spectacular scenery, affordable infrastructure, and enough distance from Hollywood's standard practices to maintain budget discipline. Audiences watching Big Jake and Chisholm back-to-back might notice the similarities, but most viewers simply accepted each ranch as appropriate for its respective story without questioning whether they'd seen those buildings before. Fact number 9. The cinematographer featured a waterfall more than the script actually required. William Clothier handled cinematography on Big Jake, continuing a partnership with Wayne that stretched back to the Alamo in 1960. And Clothier once remarked that no mountain existed he wouldn't climb if climbing it meant getting a better shot, which is why his work on the Mexican locations earned praise from Variety and other trade publications. Near Nombre de Dios in Durango, Clothier discovered El Saltito Waterfall, a spectacular triple waterfall located on a high desert plateau that was so extraordinarily picturesque that Clothier included it in more shots than the story actually required, finding excuses to frame scenes against that dramatic backdrop whenever possible. The automatic handgun demonstration scene prominently features the waterfall, along with several other sequences where the rushing water adds visual drama without serving specific plot functions, because Clothier simply couldn't resist showcasing this natural wonder, even when the script didn't explicitly call for it. Turner Classic Movies later singled out Clothier's work for specific praise. The best thing about Big Jake is the cinematography by William H. Clothier, who takes spectacular advantage of the film's locations, and that spectacular advantage included generous use of El Saltito waterfall, transforming a natural landmark into a recurring visual motif throughout the film. Cinematographers sometimes fall in love with locations, and when they do, those locations tend to appear more frequently than strict narrative necessity would dictate, which explains why El Saltito waterfall captivated Clothier, and why Big Jake benefited from his determination to showcase its beauty at every opportunity. Fact number 10. 3 actors went from Big Jake directly to fame on Dallas. Jim Davis appeared in Big Jake as the head of a lynching party, delivering a supporting performance in a film dominated by Wayne's presence, and 12 years old when he made his film debut. Davis had worked steadily in Hollywood for decades without achieving major stardom. 1978 arrived with CBS launching a primetime soap opera called Dallas, and Jim Davis was cast as Jock Ewing, the family patriarch whose oil empire and family conflicts drove the show's central storylines. At 63 years old, Davis finally achieved the fame that had eluded him throughout his earlier career, playing Jock Ewing from 1978 until 1981, and becoming one of the most recognizable faces on American television. Glenn Corbett played the outlaw O'Brien in Big Jake, a member of Richard Boone's villainous gang, and years after Big Jake, Corbett joined the Dallas cast as attorney Paul Morgan, appearing from 1983 to 1988 in a recurring role that made him familiar to millions of viewers. Corbett had played the good guy Pat Garrett in Chisholm just 1 year before Big Jake, then switched to playing a villain in Wayne's next film, demonstrating his range and willingness to tackle different character types in back-to-back Western productions with the same actor appearing in consecutive Wayne films while occupying opposite moral alignments. 3 men appeared in Big Jake, and 3 men later found substantial television success on the same show, since Dallas became a cultural phenomenon in the late 70s and 80s, and Big Jake had featured several actors who would ride that success to career-defining roles. Fact number 11. A cast member served under Patton, then played a general under Patton. John Doucette portrayed Captain Buck Duggan in Big Jake, bringing authority and military bearing to the role of a Texas Ranger captain, and that bearing came naturally to Doucette, who had earned it through actual combat experience. During World War II, Doucette served as an infantry rifleman in General Patton's Third Army, participating in the Battle of the Bulge, one of the war's bloodiest engagements where American forces suffered tens of thousands of casualties during Germany's final major offensive on the Western Front. The year before Big Jake, Doucette appeared in Patton, the Academy Award-winning film starring George C. Scott as the legendary general, and Doucette played Major General Lucien Truscott, a commander serving under Patton during the North African and Italian campaigns. The irony ran deep. A man who had actually served under Patton as an enlisted rifleman returned decades later to portray a general serving under that same commander in a Hollywood production, with Doucette bringing authentic military experience to both roles, having lived the reality that both Big Jake and Patton attempted to recreate. Hollywood also recognized Doucette as the fastest draw in town with a 6-gun, and that reputation served him well across dozens of westerns throughout his career, establishing him as one of the most reliable character actors working in the genre. Fact number 12. Britain gave the film a rare age restriction for a John Wayne movie. British censors classified Big Jake with an AA certificate, restricting admission to viewers aged 14 and older, and this age restriction was rare for Wayne films, appearing on only 3 productions across his entire career: Big Jake, Cahill U.S. Marshal in 1973, and McHugh in 1974. The violence prompted this classification, with contemporary American critics consistently noting the unusual brutality for a Wayne picture, and Gene Siskel awarded the film just 2 out of 4 stars in the Chicago Tribune, specifically citing violence as unusual for a John Wayne film. Wayne had publicly criticized graphic movie violence, particularly Sam Peckinpah's The Wild Bunch, during his famous 1971 Playboy interview, since traditional Hollywood values mattered to Wayne, including the principle that violence should carry consequences without becoming glorified spectacle. Big Jake contradicted those stated principles, introducing Wild Bunch-style blood squibs for the first time in any Wayne film, with gunshot wounds actually bleeding on screen, and the opening massacre at the McCandles Ranch, the brutal bathhouse shootout, and the violent finale all exceeding what Wayne had previously allowed in his productions. British censors recognized this immediately, and responded with age restrictions that acknowledged Big Jake's departure from typical Wayne territory, while American critics caught the same contradiction, questioning why Wayne's film featured the same graphic violence he had condemned in other directors' work. The AA certificate marked Big Jake as something different, something more violent and potentially disturbing than audiences expected from a John Wayne Western. Fact number 13. A Tony Award winner played the housekeeper. Virginia Capers appeared in Big Jake as Delilah, the McCandles family housekeeper who witnesses the opening massacre, and the role gave Capers limited screen time, but her presence added authenticity to the ranch household scenes. 3 years later, Capers won the Tony Award for Best Lead Actress in a Musical for playing Lena Mama Younger in Raisin, a musical adaptation of Lorraine Hansberry's A Raisin in the Sun, and the production ran for 847 performances on Broadway, establishing Capers as a major theatrical talent. Big Jake also earned Capers a nomination for an NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Actress in a Motion Picture, representing the only major award recognition the film received beyond the Patsy Award that went to the dog performers, and Capers continued working in film, television, and theater for decades. 2 decades after Big Jake, she voiced a character in the 1993 video game Gabriel Knight, Sins of the Fathers, winning Computer Gaming World's Award for Best Female Voiceover Acting, and her career spanned multiple mediums and multiple generations, from John Wayne Westerns to cutting-edge video game technology. What audiences saw in Big Jake was a character actress delivering professional work in a supporting role, but what they didn't know was that they were watching a future Tony Award winner, someone whose talents extended far beyond what any single Western could showcase. Fact number 14. The film's working title was far more genetic. During production in Mexico, cast and crew referred to their project as the $1 Million Kidnapping, a straightforward title that revealed the plot rather than focusing on Wayne's character and emphasized the crime story over the star's persona. The switch to Big Jake occurred before the theatrical release, fundamentally changing how the film was marketed, since instead of advertising a kidnapping thriller, Batjack Productions and National General Pictures sold audiences on John Wayne and Big Jake, centering everything on the Duke's presence and character rather than the rescue plot. This change reflected Hollywood's understanding that Wayne himself was the attraction, because audiences didn't buy tickets to see kidnapping stories, but rather to see John Wayne, and the title Big Jake promised what fans wanted: Wayne playing a larger-than-life character with a memorable nickname, exactly the kind of role that had defined his career for decades. The $1 Million Kidnapping sounds like a television movie or a B-picture, something generic and forgettable, while Big Jake sounds like a John Wayne Western, which is exactly what it became, and marketing teams understood this distinction, with the title change demonstrating their awareness that Wayne's name and character carried more weight than any plot description could convey. Fact number 15. The period automobiles had historically accurate right-hand steering. The Texas Rangers arrive at the McCandles Ranch in Rayo runabouts, early automobiles that represent the modern technology beginning to replace horses in law enforcement and civilian life, and these vehicles weren't Hollywood props or modified modern cars disguised to look period-appropriate. The Rayo runabouts in Big Jake were authentic period vehicles featuring right-hand drive, which was historically accurate for American automobiles manufactured before Ford switched to left-hand drive with the Model T in 1908, and Rayo Motor Car Company, founded in 1905 by Ransom E. Olds, produced these specific models that appear throughout the film. This attention to detail distinguished Big Jake from productions that fake period accuracy through cosmetic modifications, since the production secured genuine historical vehicles rather than accepting modern substitutes, ensuring that everything audiences saw reflected actual 1909 technology. Right-hand drive in American cars strikes modern viewers as unusual, since left-hand drive has been standard for over a century, but in 1909, the automobile industry hadn't yet standardized these details, with different manufacturers making different choices, and right-hand drive remaining common among several companies. Big Jake's commitment to using authentic Rio runabouts added credibility to the 1909 setting, demonstrating that production designers and historical consultants cared about accuracy beyond costumes and weapons, since even minor details like steering wheel placement received attention, creating a more authentic period atmosphere. Fact number 16. Wayne's wardrobe supervisor hitchhiked to Hollywood with $65. Luster Bayless handled wardrobe supervision for John Wayne personally, ensuring that every costume fit properly and matched Wayne's character requirements, and this partnership began with McClintock in 1963 and continued through Wayne's final film, The Shootist, in 1976, spanning 14-plus Wayne productions including Big Jake. Bayless's journey to Hollywood started with almost nothing, since he hitchhiked from Mississippi to California in 1959 with only $65 in his pocket, chasing the dream of working in the film industry without connections, without guarantees, and without backup plans. That journey succeeded beyond what anyone could have predicted, with Bayliss becoming one of Wayne's most trusted collaborators, responsible for an aspect of filmmaking that directly affected how the biggest star in Hollywood appeared on screen, because costumes define characters visually, and Wayne trusted Bayliss to get every detail right, production after production, year after year. After Wayne's death, Bayliss founded United American Costume Company in 1977, building a successful business based on the expertise he'd developed during his Hollywood career, and he passed away on February 11, 2022, at age 84, leaving behind a legacy that began with a $65 hitchhiking trip and ended with decades of professional achievement. Bayliss's story captures something about Hollywood in that era. Determined people with talent could still arrive with nothing and build careers through hard work and skill. The man who costumed John Wayne for the last 15 years of his career started with less than $100 and a willingness to take risks. Fact number 17. The film editor had 2 Academy Awards on his shelf. Harry Gerstad, credited as Harry W. Gerstad, edited Big Jake after a career that included 2 Academy Awards, winning Best Film Editing for Champion in 1949 and sharing the Oscar for High Noon in 1952, which established him as one of Hollywood's most accomplished editors. Gerstad's career began as a laboratory assistant at Hal Roach Studios before he rose through Warner Brothers and Republic Pictures, learning every aspect of post-production work, and by the time Big Jake came along, Gerstad had edited dozens of films across multiple genres, bringing decades of experience to the cutting room. His editorial challenge on Big Jake included making difficult decisions about screen time, since the film ran too long in its initial assembly and footage had to be cut to reach a commercially viable running time of 110 minutes, with Maureen O'Hara's scenes absorbing much of this trimming and reducing her role despite her top billing alongside Wayne. O'Hara later confirmed in her memoir Tis Herself that she wasn't happy about the cuts, revealing that some of her scenes with Wayne had been removed entirely, and Gerstad faced the unenviable task of disappointing a major star by prioritizing pacing and runtime over her screen presence. 2 Academy Awards meant Gerstad understood how to construct effective narratives through editing choices, and Big Jake benefited from that expertise, even if those choices meant reducing O'Hara's participation and cutting material that might have added depth to their characters' relationship. Fact number 18. Maureen O'Hara's scenes were cut, and she wasn't happy. Maureen O'Hara and John Wayne had appeared together in 5 films before Big Jake Rio Grande in 1950, The Quiet Man in 1952, The Wings of Eagles in 1957, and McClintock in 1963, with each collaboration showcasing their remarkable chemistry and O'Hara matching Wayne's screen presence in ways few other actresses could manage. Big Jake became their 5th and final collaboration, and O'Hara's role as Martha McCandles disappointed her from the beginning, since she confirmed in her 2004 memoir Tis Herself that she wasn't crazy about the small part, limited to the beginning and end of the film without much substance in between, and she agreed to participate because it was Duke, accepting the role based on their friendship and professional history rather than the material itself. The editing process made things worse, since the film ran too long and material had to be cut, with O'Hara's scenes with Wayne absorbing significant trimming and reducing her screen time even further than the script had originally indicated. O'Hara learned about these cuts when she finally saw the finished film, discovering that some of her work with Wayne had simply disappeared, removed to improve pacing or reduce runtime to commercially acceptable length, and the disappointment she'd felt about the limited role intensified when she discovered that even those limited scenes hadn't all survived. Big Jake also marked O'Hara's departure from Hollywood for 20 years, since she walked away after this picture and didn't return to screens until Only the Lonely in 1991, which means watching Big Jake means watching the final chapter of one of cinema's great partnerships, along with the last appearance O'Hara would grant audiences for 2 full decades. Their final collaboration ended with less screen time than O'Hara deserved, less material than audiences expected, and a 20-year absence that left the partnership unresolved until both stars had moved well into their later years. Fact number 19. A Star Trek legend appeared as one of the outlaws. Glenn Corbett played O'Brien, a member of Richard Boone's kidnapping gang in Big Jake, and Western fans recognized Corbett from numerous genre appearances, including his role as the heroic Pat Garrett in Chisholm just 1 year earlier. Science fiction fans knew Corbett from something completely different, since in 1967 he appeared in the Star Trek episode Metamorphosis, portraying Zephram Cochrane, the inventor of warp drive technology that enabled humanity to explore the galaxy, and this character became central to Star Trek mythology, establishing the fictional history that underpinned the entire franchise. 29 years after Corbett's appearance, James Cromwell portrayed the same character in Star Trek First Contact in 1996, connecting the original series to the Next Generation timeline, and Cochrane's importance to Star Trek canon meant that Corbett's performance remained referenced and honored across multiple Trek productions, spanning different eras and different casts. Corbett also achieved another television milestone, replacing George Maharis on Route 66 in 1963-64, playing Vietnam veteran Lincoln Case, and this character represented the first television role depicting someone with first-hand Vietnam War experience, arriving during the war's early escalation when American involvement remained limited and controversial. Big Jake audiences watching Glenn Corbett ride with Fane's gang had no reason to connect this Western outlaw to the inventor of warp drive or to television's first Vietnam veteran, since Corbett moved seamlessly between genres and character types, building a career that touched Westerns, science fiction, and contemporary drama with equal facility. Fact number 20. The 50th anniversary reunited three of the sons who made the film. 2021 marked Big Jake's 50th anniversary, and the Fort Worth Stockyards hosted a commemorative panel at their John Wayne, an American Experience exhibit, bringing together Patrick Wayne, Ethan Wayne, and Christopher Mitchum to discuss the film and reunite three of the actors who had portrayed the younger generation of McCandlesses in the original production. Patrick revealed something memorable about the famous scene where his character mockingly calls Wayne Daddy before getting thrown into a mud hole, confirming that despite the comedic mockery in that scene, Daddy was what he called his father throughout his entire life, which meant the scene captured their actual relationship rather than requiring Patrick to adopt unfamiliar terminology for his character. The panel brought together three men whose lives had been shaped by their involvement in Big Jake and by their connections to John Wayne, with that connection being familial for Patrick and Ethan but becoming complicated and painful for Mitchum. The falling out between Wayne and Christopher Mitchum following their June 7, 1972 appearance on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson had never been resolved, since their political disagreement about environmentalism aired on national television, and Wayne never forgave what he perceived as disrespect. When Wayne faced his final battle with stomach cancer in 1979, Mitchum attempted to make contact before it ended, seeking reconciliation, closure, anything to repair what had broken 7 years earlier, but no response ever arrived and Wayne died without any communication restored between them. The 50th anniversary panel allowed Mitchum to discuss Big Jake with humor and perspective, joking that by the end of the film, everyone else sported bullet wounds while his character remained the only one not bleeding. But the feud with Wayne still cast shadows across his entire professional life, decades after both the film and Wayne's death. Three sons gathered to remember a film they'd made together 50 years earlier, two brothers honoring their father's legacy, one actor still carrying the weight of a broken relationship that time never healed. These 20 hidden facts reveal Big Jake as something far more complex than a straightforward revenge western, with Olympic champions performing stunts while the score waited 30 years for release. Authentic period automobiles sharing screen time with disguised modern motorcycles, Tony Award winners and Academy Award-winning editors contributing their talents to a production that drew its cast from diverse backgrounds and sent several actors toward future television fame. And behind every frame existed stories audiences never knew, connections they never suspected, and creative decisions that shaped the final film in unexpected ways. Big Jake succeeded commercially, earning $9 million internationally and $7.5 million domestically on a $4.8 million budget, contributing to Wayne's final year as the #1 box office star in America, while critical reception remained mixed, with some reviewers praising the cinematography while others questioned the graphic violence that distinguished this production from earlier Wayne films. Time has been kind to Big Jake, with Rotten Tomatoes currently showing a 75% critical rating and an 85% audience score, and the film remains available on streaming platforms and Blu-ray, with restored high-definition transfers and 5.1 Dolby Digital surround sound, allowing new generations to discover Wayne's violent Twilight Western. 7 more films followed Big Jake before Wayne completed The Shootist in 1976, his final performance as a dying gunfighter confronting mortality, and stomach cancer claimed Wayne on June 11, 1979, while Maureen O'Hara passed away on October 24, 2015. George Sherman died in 1991, Richard Boone in 1981, and Bruce Cabot departed just 1 year after Big Jake wrapped in 1972. All of them are gone now, but Big Jake remains, carrying these hidden stories, these unexpected connections, these production secrets that reveal how much more existed behind the camera than audiences ever witnessed on screen. If you enjoyed discovering these 20 hidden facts about Big Jake, make sure to like this video, leave a comment sharing your favorite John Wayne Western, and subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into classic Hollywood history, and hit that notification bell so you never miss another exploration of the films that defined an era, because there are 170 John Wayne films in total and every single one carries stories waiting to be told. Until next time, keep watching the classics,